So you've decided to look into going on a cruise. Awesome. But where do you start? I'm Rebecca, your cruise concierge. Today I wanted to touch on several points that you have to consider when you're planning a trip, like a cruise, especially your first one. When you start your cruise research, start with the hurdles. What's the cost? What is your timeline? What time of year can you go? Is it a really long distance to the ports? Or do you live really close to one? What is your travel style? What is your family's travel style? For that matter, who are you traveling with? Is it your family, friends? Is it a couple, solo? Those are all really important factors to think about when you're deciding how to even start framing up the search for your cruise. Next, move on to identifying your must-haves or your critical decision makers. Things like, what type of cruising are you looking for? Are you looking for fun? Are you looking for family? Are you looking for luxury? Are you looking for specific food, beverage, or entertainment styles? What destinations did you want to make sure that you got to see on the cruise? Are amenities like Wi-Fi, kids clubs, or activities really important to the family or to you for travel? If they are, make sure they're on your list. Next, you're going to want to move on to learning about the cruise companies and specific ships. Where do you even start that search? Honestly, probably one of the best places out there to begin that is here on YouTube. There are so many well-informed travelers, people from the cruise industry, people from the travel industry, people who just love cruising, who've put information out there. Cruising is a passion for a lot of people. They definitely will help inform your choices as you go through your search for the right cruise for you. So check out videos that are about ships, that are about destinations, that are about the experiences on ships, or again, about the type of travel that you want to do. If what you're really interested in is family travel, go and check out some of those great family vlogs that are out there that are going to tell you what that family experienced and what maybe some of the challenges they ran into on specific ships or with specific companies were. There are also some great web resources on personal blogs, chat boards like Reddit or Cruise Critic, your travel agent. If you don't have a travel agent, reaching out to any travel agent and asking some basic questions will give you an idea whether or not you can create a relationship with that travel agent. If you're getting some bare minimum basics and you're like, I don't feel like this person's connecting with where I'm at in deciding, look for another travel agent. This isn't like a doctor where you're lining up in many locations to get a doctor for, on a 2-year wait list. Look for a travel agent that connects with you, that you feel here's what you're looking for and is putting all of their effort into finding and helping find the right vacation for you. Also, friends and family are great resources. If any of them have ever cruised, maybe if they haven't cruised, but they have heard certain things, or they're like, oh, I would have really loved to have tried that. I just haven't never had a chance. Use those resources to understand what's possible out there. And especially if any of those people are people you're traveling with, pick their brains for what are the make or breaks to make this vacation the most amazing trip you'll ever be on. So let's go to the next step. How do you start pricing out your trips? Cost is usually a pretty big factor for almost everyone. If you are independently wealthy and wish to adopt someone to take on cruises, I volunteer. However, cost is usually really important to most people. So one of the best tactics to start that search is to separate the base cruise fare out from basically everything else so that you can get an apples to apples comparison. When I say cruising base fare, there's a few important things for you to understand. Cruises have certain components. They have a base fare. So that's essentially the same as if you looked at a hotel and you said, that is the room rate for the night. On top of that, though, on cruises, there's going to be taxes and fees. This also can be very similar to what happens in hotels, where you might have a tourism improvement fee, which might appear in your final bill, but it wasn't part of the original quote. You also will likely have provincial, state, territorial, country taxes on top of that. So understanding how those taxes and fees are going to add to your cruise fare is important. But being able to look at the cruise fare without those elements is a good factor as well. In general, looking at the cruise base fare plus the taxes and fees, that gives you a more holistic image, because you might have 2 cruise base fares that are identical, but if they're traveling to different ports and those taxes and fees, which are related to ports, are therefore higher in one port versus another, you could end up with a discrepant image of what you're looking at. So what I would suggest is that you look at the cruise base fare plus taxes and fees plus gratuities. The reason I recommend that you also look at gratuities is that no matter what ship you're going to go on, you're either going to find that gratuities are included in the fare, or they are not included in the fare, but they are expected. And while almost every company out there will allow you to remove your gratuities from your final bill on the ship, it is very much frowned upon, and it really doesn't support the cruise industry, the employees working there, and it should be a consideration of part of your fare. If you're traveling with a company that includes it, great. But if you're traveling with a company that does not include it, it doesn't mean that it's not still owed. So with that, if you simply include the gratuities in your price cost comparison, you will be as close to comparing apples to apples as you possibly can be. What things I would not include are the additionals. I would not be looking at what exactly does it cost with your drink packages or Wi-Fi or things. Well, there are some cruise ship companies out there that are including those with their, all-in or select ones or things like that. Those are not consistent across the fleet whatsoever. And so you could still compare a cruise base fare, including taxes, fees, and gratuities, to a more inclusive cruise fare with the same company, for example, to understand what are they charging you differently to get to that higher level of having those perks included. One of the best sites that I have found that can be used in the US, Canada, likely anywhere in the world, is Vacations to Go. This is an aggregator site. It is also a travel agent, so you can book through them, but you don't have to. To be able to use their site, you can simply go on the web, look at Vacations to Go, and basically you hit select cruise, and you can search for times of the year, companies, cruise line, cruise ship, whatever your factors may be. What is your departure port that you're looking at? Are you looking at maybe the entire state of Florida and any ports in Florida? It gives you a much wider range, and you can really tweak it to what you're looking at. One of the things that I really love, though, about Vacations to Go is at the top right-hand corner, you have the ability to select between multiple different currencies, so you can have an understanding of how much the quote would be in your own country's currency. You also have the ability to switch on the upper left side between all-inclusive fares, single supplement fares, or just your general, what is the lowest fare going? Each of those fares is then going to break down into the multiple categories of rooms. So it can give you a lot of pieces to work with to really understand what are your potential options out there. There are other aggregator sites, Expedia, Cruise Critic, Travelocity, all sorts of different companies like those. There are things to note, though, that could be different, not only between aggregators, but between different travel agents. If you're using a travel agent, it's quite possible that you could get a perk that's part of your booking. So if you call up a cruise company directly, the likelihood is they're going to give you their lowest published fare, and that's where it ends. Yes, at different times, you're going to see different advertisements of buy one, get one, meaning you pay for the first adult and the second adult is essentially free, but it's not. It's simply that they've lowered the base fare to a set level, and then they've said, well, that level is going to cover 2 people. The biggest thing to know when you're comparing, again, to get apples to apples, is to look at something like an aggregator site or even the cruise companies directly and understand what is the base fare that they're currently basing any of their pricing on. And then, depending on how that goes, then it's looking at any of these travel agencies or aggregators to see, are they offering something additional? Sometimes you'll see things, again, like free drink package, free Wi-Fi package, grats included, those sorts of things. And that can be a huge savings to you. So be aware of what the perks are and what value that perk brings to you in the potential booking. A TA can be amazing to help you organize your thoughts on this, sort out the details, and understand what value the perks bring to you. Last, consider carefully the type of stateroom you want. This makes a huge difference to your pricing structure and how you approach the costing of your trip. If you can't imagine traveling without access to the open air, so therefore you want a balcony, then it's really important that you be costing all of the different research you're doing at a balcony level. If you are looking for the lowest possible price, then know that you're going to be costing that across the entire industry as an inside room. There are other room types that you can go that are in between there. For example, an outside room will have a view, but no open air. But at least you have a window, you have a view. You could, cost maybe not be an issue. So maybe you're really focused on a suite, or maybe you're having more people travel with you. So something like a suite might have more options for you, space and size wise. These are all really important things to consider in how you decide your approach to pricing out a trip. Once you have decided on a ship and date, or if you need more help, a TA can really help you. There's many factors that go into why it is easier to work with a TA when you're booking for a cruise. I have booked both methods. I have booked individually with the cruise line, and I've booked through a TA. In fact, there are several factors that go towards making it more convenient to work with a travel agent when you're considering booking a cruise. One is that they often have special phone lines to call into, which can ultimately result in lesser wait times. They will end up sitting on hold to make changes and get questions answered for you. Or again, even if you're on hold with your travel agent, they can use these special phone lines to call in and hopefully be able to have a faster route to the front of the line. You will still get ownership of your booking, especially when it comes down to after you've booked and it's all processed. When it comes down to how do you access the cruise company website, how do you access your pre-cruise planner, all of those things, those are you. That's not your travel agent. That is where you can really take ownership of your booking, look at all the options, look at the excursions. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't use your travel agent's services to make some of those bookings. But if you just want to be able to now go through and kind of get your fingers into the nitty-gritty of your booking, you still retain ownership of it. Where the big difference is that, say, for example, you wanted to cancel your cruise, you need to go through your travel agent to do that. If you needed to change the dates or the sailing of your cruise, you need to go through your travel agent to do that. But when it comes down to the cruise you chose and putting all the details together for that cruise, you still own it. It's yours. And you can absolutely control the planning details for putting that together. Another really big thing to consider when you're booking a big trip like a cruise is it is easiest to book insurance when you book with a TA. Again, I have booked both individually and without insurance and through a travel agent with insurance. Most travel agents will only and can only include insurance for a certain period of time after the cruise is booked. The reason being is that, especially if you want to have cancellation insurance, that needs to be tied to when you book the cruise. If all of a sudden you're deciding 3 months later to potentially cancel the cruise and you're trying to add insurance so that you can cancel, that's not really acceptable in the industry. You can't, I'm going to go and buy the cancellation insurance so I can turn around tomorrow and cancel it. That's not really how insurance works. That's like waiting until after the day that you'd get a diagnosis from the doctor before you go and buy life insurance. It's just not how insurance works. So it is best to decide in advance, will you be buying insurance? And again, this decision is unique to every individual, but I really, really would recommend it to anyone who is very serious about understanding the financial risks of what could happen when you're traveling. No matter what your age, no matter what your situation, if you get into an accident, if something happens to you, if something happens to the ship, if something happens to your flight, how are you covered? How is your family covered? Having insurance, it's a very, very small investment in the big picture of things. Usually it's based on sort of a dollar figure. So recently I booked approximately $1,500 to $2,000 in travel. And for all of that, the insurance for that time period was $46. $46, yes, that is, a nice meal on the ship if I wanted to upgrade or something like that. But in the big picture, it is a much lower investment than what could happen if something bad happened on the trip. And while you never want to think about the bad things that could happen, it's so much better to know that if they happen, you're covered. And other than that, you just cannot worry about it. So a few things to avoid as you go through this process, as you decide what that amazing cruise trip is going to be for you. Avoid analysis paralysis. I am the queen of analysis paralysis. I love to dissect things. I'm a data nerd. I pick things apart. I figure out every possible outcome. I try to think of everything that can happen. And sometimes it honestly just freezes me in place and it keeps me from making a good decision and just running with it. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and book the very first cruise you see and you're like, that's amazing, and you didn't do your due diligence. You didn't do your cross shopping. You didn't compare some prices. But just don't analyze it to death. By going through steps 1 and 2, really where you're identifying what are your key, must-haves, what are your absolute, these are the full stop elements. Once you've identified those initial key components that are really going to make or break your trip, everything else starts to be very similar. So just don't spend so much time that you're making the planning process unenjoyable. Even once you book, there's still so much more research that you can do. So if you are an analysis kind of person, there's still so much more you can look into and have fun with. So yeah, just don't get stuck in the weeds. Another thing to avoid is the idea that everybody going, so if it's a big family or your big bunch of friends, is that you all need to do everything together. You don't. No matter what kind of travel you go on, that's true. But especially in cruising, you don't need to be attached at the hip. You may want to be. You may think, I want to spend all this time with my family and friends. That's what we're going together for. But the simple fact is, just like at family vacation at home, where there will be a point when somebody's going to get into a fight, or they're going to drive each other a little nuts, or somebody's purposely trying to wind somebody up. It's no different on a cruise ship. Not having to spend every minute together. If someone I'm traveling with wants to go and hang out on the pool deck for 3 hours, fantastic for them. I will burn to a crisp. I'm red at the best of times. Put me on a pool deck for a couple of hours, I might as well just go lay down in the medical bay because that's where I'll be spending the rest of my vacation. You don't need to spend every minute together. You might enjoy different activities, but you still can come back together for the things you do love to do. Everybody maybe in your family loves trivia. Great. Everybody, let's get back together at 2 p.m. in some bar to do trivia. Fantastic. Or, hey, we've all agreed that tomorrow in St. Thomas, let's get together and do this tour. We all leave at 9. We're going to get our own private transportation, yada, yada, yada. The whole thing is that you can make those moments. You can have meals together. You can have meals apart. You can spend time at shows together. You can spend time apart. There's just so many different ways, and there's no right way and there's no wrong way to approach that type of element of your travel. Another thing to avoid, though, is thinking that everything will be perfect. Again, just like a family vacation, you may have the most golden, sunshiny memories of your family get-togethers and how perfect they were and how everything went amazing. I want you to be realistic with yourself. Go back and think about those days. You're going to think about all those good times. And then think about, the Saturday morning where the kids got into a rolling on the ground fight over the remote control for the TV, or who got to play video games, or maybe grandma just didn't feel like making a certain type of dish and somebody else really, really wanted it for a holiday celebration. Inevitably, you're going to have conflict between family, between friends. It's natural. So instead of letting that derail you, embrace that it's part of what makes it fun. You look back on those get-togethers fondly because that's just the nature of the beast. It can take one golden moment to overwhelm and overshadow 5 little negative ones. Just don't go into it thinking that everything's going to be perfect. Instead, embrace what comes. Embrace the challenges, embrace anything that comes up. I'm not saying you should embrace if everything in the possible is going wrong. That's no fun. That's not fun when you're cruising. But if you are looking at it that everything doesn't have to be perfect, if something happens like, everybody's bag shows up at their room on the ship prior to dinner, except for one person, that doesn't mean the bag is missing. It just may mean that it's going to take a little longer to get to you. If it is missing, it doesn't mean it's going to be missing for the entire cruise. It means this is the time to seek help, to make sure that you have those people helping you work on those things so that you're not jammed up down the road. But either way, looking forward and understanding that not everything will be perfect and being able to be ready to roll with the punches will make everything so much easier to deal with when you're on a big trip like this. And last, and I know this might sound a little cheesy, but honestly, I try to do this every day, because if you don't, you're just more likely to be miserable than anything else. But that's choose happiness. You choose how you approach your vacation. You choose how you approach your life. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have hardships and strife coming at them, and sometimes that's really hard to deal with. But you still, in a situation like this, not going down the road of personal extreme situations, but just on a day-to-day basis, choose happiness. Choose to wake up in the morning, and if you didn't have enough sleep, you're on a vacation. Take another nap. Go back to sleep for a few hours. Think about that and just try to approach your cruise from that perspective of how do you choose happiness? How do you just wake up in the day and say, you know what? Today's going to be a good day. Let me know if there's interest in breaking down ship costs for a vacation that I recently planned. It's a great way to see how you can really piece out an apples to apples comparison and still also look at your extras to decide, do they fit inside my budget or don't they? And what value are they going to bring to my trip? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below to let me know, is this something you're interested in seeing more of? Check out this next video on cruising during the holidays, and I look forward to seeing you at sea.